So,
Like a snake, unjaws.
Yeah.
a couple things. You guys are already mentioned a bunch of these different characteristics of birds as we answer our question. So, first off, birds. Obviously, something that's important about most birds is that they have the ability to fly. Not all birds, but most. And a lot of their adaptations are related to that. And one of those is their bones. And Faith, you said it right? The bones of a bird are actually very, very lightweight. And they're lightweight because they are different from, the bones of, let's say, a mammal, in that they're sort of hollow. They're not completely hollow on the inside, but what this means is there's not very dense bone material throughout the entire bone. Instead, there's sort of these strands of bone. So you see in a bird bone, rather than being a big chunk of solid bone tissue, the inside is crisscrossed with all of these little fibers of bone. So what do you think their purpose is? Really?
To be light for them to fly?
Yeah, but but why not just have it completely hollow?
Wait. So like they can if they fall when they're flying, they don't break their bones?
Yeah, so having these strands like reinforcing it make the bone still pretty strong, but also lightweight. If you imagine like we drive over a big steel bridge, the girders and stuff, they're sort of crisscross and triangles, and it's not just a solid chunks of metal spanning because it gives it a lighter weight while still being strong. We call those trusses. So anyway, yeah, those crisscrosses of bone fiber help make the bone strong but still be light inside. Sophia?
Wait. So they're not completely hollow, so they're kind of
Yeah.
So they're not like one of those Eastern bunny
No, they're not completely hollow. They're crisscrossed with these reinforcing strands of bone tissue. Really?
What's a girder?
It's just to hold a structure up in the air like that holds the bridge over the river. Girder.
Girder?
All right, now reproduction. Birds, as you guys said, birds can live, they don't have to go to water to reproduce. So again, like reptiles, they have internal fertilization. So that when birds mate, the male deposits sperm inside of the female's reproductive tract. The sperm cells fertilize a tiny little egg cell inside of the female. And then, after that fertilization has happened, then what we would call an egg, the shell and all those other parts, they form after the individual egg cell gets fertilized. And then, what is the bird obviously lays the egg, and it then develops outside of the body. So they have internal fertilization, but they have external development.
How long does it take?
It depends on the bird. So it depends on the bird. It could be a few weeks or it could be longer. Different species have different incubation times. So,
Did you know that platypuses lay eggs?
yeah, we'll talk about them in our next section when we talk about mammals, but you're right. Birds are warm-blooded. So this is the first group of vertebrates that we've gotten to that is warm-blooded. So birds can be active at any temperature. You know this, there's birds flying around here in the winter. Many of them have migrated, but there are birds that are active and moving around. There's birds that live in very cold conditions, and they can live in very cold conditions, for example, like a penguin, because they're maintaining their own body heat. They're not depending on their surroundings for it. They maintain their own body, but as we talked about the other day, it does require a lot of energy, so they need to eat much more than a cold-blooded animal. Circulation. Birds have a full four-chambered heart. Okay? And this is important for birds because the act of flying requires a lot of energy. So birds need to get a lot of oxygen to the cells that are allowing them to fly. And the most efficient way to do that is through a four-chambered heart. And we're going to talk a lot about this when we get to the body systems. But this is a four-chambered heart. We have two atrium on top, two ventricle on the bottom. And the benefit of this four-chambered heart is that the deoxygenated blood never mixes with the oxygenated blood. It's kept separate here. It's kept separate here. This deoxygenated blood gets pumped out. Where do you think it needs to go?
Out of your nose.
If it's deoxygenated, what organ does this blood need to go to?
Your lungs.
The lungs. So these lead to the lungs. Once the blood is recharged with oxygen, it returns back to the heart. But does it come back to the same chamber? No, it comes to this side of the heart. And now it has oxygen, comes here, and then gets pumped out, and then it can go all throughout the various parts of the body, all the muscles, to the brain, so it's getting as much oxygen as possible because that blood is fully oxygenated. Billy?
Oh yeah, why do we have to learn about like body systems in here when we learn about it and no?
We get into a lot more detail, I believe, than if you did an out for each of the body systems. So the benefit again, there's no mixing of oxygen-rich and oxygen-poor blood. It stays completely separated, and that's very efficient. Sophia?
If they mixed, if they didn't, then what would happen?
Well, not anything really would happen, but so let's say that blood mixes like in a two-chambered heart. Then when that blood gets to your muscles, some of that blood has oxygen to give to your muscle cells, but some of it does not. So some of that blood's not really going to be helping at all.
So then
It's just not as efficient as getting oxygen to those cells.
So then if like you said like the deoxygenated blood goes to the
Lungs.
lungs, yeah. What if those two got mixed and went to the lungs?
Same thing. Like, so you'd have blood in the lungs, and some already has oxygen, so it's like not going to be able to absorb anymore. So the ones that are deoxygenated would get that oxygen back, but it would be just wasteful to have oxygenated blood in the lungs because it already has oxygen. It doesn't need to be there. So it just gets more there.
Why do you have a name for your bird?
That was so old.
Eggs. So obviously we know birds lay eggs, like reptiles, but their eggs are different. Their shell is hard and brittle. It's made of calcium, and it's waterproof. So again, inside of that egg is a nice little moist, watery environment for the embryo to grow. Because they're laid on dry land and not in the water, they need to keep that nice, moist environment inside an egg. That's the purpose of eggs. To have a little, basically, you brought a little bit of the water onto land in that
Aren't
egg.
there like some like gooey slime and stuff when like eggs hatch?
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
it's
stuff
like-
inside there. Usually though, it's mostly, by the time an egg hatches, it's almost completely filled up by the
What is
chip
Yeah,
embryo.
wait.
We'll talk about what's in an egg in 1 minute.
Why are the like little chicky thingies like wet when they come out of the egg?
Just because they've been in a waterproof environment, like you put a waterproof suit on,
Yeah.
you're gonna get all sweaty inside of there. Right? So
I've never put a waterproof suit on. I don't know what you're talking about.
put a raincoat on and run around outside.
Waterproof?
I don't like raincoats. They make me feel disgusting. and, like,
Because you're sweating. So the shell of the egg also allows gases in and out, so that's important because as the embryo is growing inside the egg, it still needs oxygen, still needs to release carbon dioxide, so the egg is permeable to those things. And bird eggs need to be incubated after they are laid, and that means basically keeping them at the proper temperature and moisture until they're ready to hatch. So you'll know that often the mother bird, after laying her clutch of
They
eggs,
like sit on
will stay on them periodically to keep them warm enough, to keep them moist until they are ready to hatch.
Isn't that like why they like even wait, I forgot what I was gonna say, that's mine.
They don't need to be on them, constantly. They can leave the eggs for a little while and come back to them and return. The eggs can be cooled down and then incubated days later, and they will start to develop again. So they don't need to be immediately incubated.
Say you got like a chick or like some kind of bird, don't they usually have to have like light on them to keep them warm?
No, they just need warmth.
They don't. How did? But
Are you thinking like an incubator that that you put an egg in?
yeah, or something like that, or don't they have like some sort of light on them to keep them warm from like?
If you have like an artificial incubator, like you have a thing, you get an egg and you put it in there, it has the light, but the light really is just to make heat. To keep it
that's
right.
it.
But don't you need to put the light
Don't you
over
need
them
to have
so that they have
a
In
light
nature?
so they're warm. No, I'm talking about if you have.
Oh yes, if you have an incubator,
Okay.
But we have a big box incubator in the closet over there that has no light in it.
No.
It's generating heat through a heater in it.
Say you didn't have it, you didn't incubate.
Then you need some way to keep it warm. It doesn't have to be a light, it can be anything to keep it warm. But a lot of them do use light.
Oh.
It's like your easy bake oven.
These are like.
Uses a light bulb to cook your
Those are
food.
just so gross.
I don't like the taste.
My little cousin made me something with hers, and I almost threw up because it was so nasty. It was like a pink cookie.
Alright, so anyway, incubation is, so keep the conditions at the proper level to allow that embryo to develop. Takes a few weeks, like I said, and inside of that egg you have a tiny little, few cell embryo grows into a whole baby chick over that period of time. And so that egg contains everything they need to survive, and we'll talk about that next. We also know that many birds migrate. Now, I don't really like the way this is written.
Did you
That
write
they
it?
fly, I did not. That they fly south for the winter, because that's not necessarily true, and it's not true of birds that live in the poles of the south of the southern hemisphere and so forth.
Yeah, because.
But the point is, birds often will move during the winter. Because birds eat, lots of different foods. Some eat berries and fruits and nuts out of trees. Some eat insects. Many eat insects. Some eat invertebrates. But during the winter in a northern climate like we have here, well, that stuff's not very plentiful. And you wouldn't be able to support large populations of birds. So many birds will migrate and move to an area that has more food. But it just depends on the type of bird. There's a lot of birds that can stay in the winter areas and find enough food to survive. Sophia?
So, like, if you have, like, a bird, like, aren't there some birds that don't, like, migrate? Like, aren't there specific birds that, like...
Yeah, you'll see like around here,
Penguins.
crows and things. Yeah, penguins don't migrate, or even like
those owls.
Canadian geese, snowy owls. Yeah, there's a lot of hawks don't migrate. There's a lot of birds that
Canadian
don't.
geese are disgusting. They poop
Wait,
all
but
over your lawn.
Don't they, like,
So gross.
do they, like, stay where they are? Like,
Sometimes, or they might move. Like sometimes you have Canada geese that migrate to here
how do they
in the
stay
winter.
warm?
They have, feathers. Let's talk about feathers. Because feathers are not only used for flying, but they're also used for insulation. In fact, you may use bird feathers for insulation.
No, I don't.
Pillow.
Does anybody own a down jacket?
What's a down jacket?
You ever heard of down? It's a filling that might be inside a jacket, or in a pillow, or in a
no. Wait, is it
or in a comforter or
My
a sleeping
baby
bag, maybe a down sleeping bag.
Pillow?
Yeah, it could be in a pillow.
Pillow.
You have a down pillow? Do sometimes the feathers come poking out and they poke you in the face? You got-
that hurts so bad.
Yeah, so that pillow is filled with feathers. It's filled with a special type of feather that's called a down feather. And these are feathers that are on the inside of the bird that are real
Camouflage.
loose and fluffy. So it doesn't look like a feather you might find on the ground. It has this, the central part and then a long, stiff blade. But they're small, they're all spread out. I'll show you some down feathers in a minute. But they're to provide insulation. They trap heat in. And so if you have like a down blanket on you or in your down sleeping bag, all the body heat that you're releasing all night long gets trapped in the little air spaces that these feathers produce, and it's very warm. Down jackets, down sleeping bags can compact a lot. That's why a lot of people like them, is that you could squish them down in a very, very small area. And then once you fluff them up, they retain their ability to insulate you.
So, like, people want to use them in the winter
Yeah.
because they're like...
Yeah, like if, people have down jackets, they're becoming popular again. And if you feel like a jacket is kind of puffy, but then you could smush it down real easy, but it's still pretty warm. If you look in the tag, you'll see that it has a down.
Oh,
it's
I have like a Patagonia.
yeah, it could be like Patagonia, or anything like there's North Face down, or any brand can make down jackets.
Yeah, then I have one of those.
But what they have is, what you'll notice in a down jacket, they'll have like little sections, right? And that's because if it was just like hollow on the inside and put a bunch of feathers, it'd all fall on the bottom.
Oh, my mom has one.
So you have those little baffles, they're called, that keep the feathers in a one
That's
area.
where, like, they kind of, like, sew it because...
Yeah, they sew the
Because then
seams.
it, like, has to stay,
Yeah.
like, calm.
Yep. So those are down feathers. So those are the types of feathers that birds have that help insulate them so they can live in cold conditions. Bird flight feathers have a unique shape. They're shaped almost like an airplane wing, so that as they move over the surface, they create lift, which allows a bird to fly. Feathers are also useful for camouflage. Many, especially female birds, have feathers that camouflage them. If you imagine like a mallard duck, female mallard duck, is sort of brown and splotchy color, helps it blend in with the shoreline where it spends most of its time after laying its egg, versus the male mallard duck is much more brightly colored. Also, birds have various types of mating rituals to try to attract mates, and often they use their feathers to attract mates. If you think like a peacock or something, they display those feathers to help attract mates. So birds evolved from reptiles.
What?
And there's a very famous fossil, and scientists thought this for a long time, and then they found this fossil called Archaeopteryx. Archaeopteryx means ancient bird. And it was a fossil that scientists found very, very well preserved in very fine sediments. It allowed them to see very, very fine detail of this animal. And what they saw is it had both bird-like and reptile-like traits. That's the actual fossil. This is kind of what scientists think it may have looked like. So what bird-like qualities do you think it has? Think?
Feathers.
Yeah, it has feathers covering much of its body, and their feathers were very well preserved. You could see the details. What else? Anything else that makes it bird-like? Lily?
It's got like bird feet.
Its feet, yeah. Anything that's more reptile-like? Bailey? The tail, okay. A long tail like that. Birds don't have a long tail, they have tail feathers, but not a long bony tail. What else, Sophia?
Kind of like their beaks.
Yeah, this is not quite a beak. There's teeth inside of that. Birds don't have teeth. Okay, birds have a bill, but there's no teeth in those bills. This had a jaw and had teeth in it, so that's more reptile-like. It also had a lot of scales on its legs. Okay. It also had little claws at the end of these wings. They're hard to see here, but you can see in here. Obviously, birds today don't have claws at the end of their wings.
Wait, are they
just have
distinct?
2 legs.
I mean extinct?
Yeah, they've been extinct a long time, but what scientists found, they thought this is sort of a transitional fossil. It showed like an in-between step from a group of reptiles that eventually evolved into birds, and this helped them understand how that happened. All right, so you guys have all eaten eggs and seen raw eggs before. Let me ask you this question first. If you took an egg out of your refrigerator, put it in an incubator, under the right conditions, would it hatch into a baby chick?
No.
Wow. Nobody thinks it would. Why not?
Because they're kind of like, they're like, they can't specific.
Why?
They need to be fertilized.
Okay, so Paige just said it, Elise just said it.
When I was little, I thought if I take an egg and I put it in the microwave,
Ooh.
that it will hatch. And I put it in the microwave for like a minute and it exploded.
Yeah. One time,
Can I try
I think Alyssa tried to, I think my daughter Alyssa tried to do, she tried to make hard-boiled egg in the microwave. And she just saw some like random thing on Instagram and said, I'm going to try it, and she put it in the microwave, and she had it in there, I don't know how long she put it in for, and all of a sudden, there's a pop, and it blew open the door of the microwave, and eggs just went all over the, so don't try that at home. Lily?
When I was little, you know those little rabbit egg candies?
Yeah.
I sat on them and I thought that I could hatch it.
Oh. Did it hatch?
No, it was really disappointing.
But the chocolate melted, I'm sure that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I thought you pooped
And you have brown all over your pants.
Yeah.
I was just trying to incubate a ramen egg.
I have a
Um,
hole in my
All right, so yeah, you guys are correct. The eggs you have in your refrigerator, they would not grow into baby chicks because, like you said, they're not fertilized. So when chickens are raised for producing eggs, okay, how do they be sure they're not fertilized?
Oh, because like in like with like egg that we eat, there's like the yolk is like it doesn't that have to do with the.
Yeah, but how do they make sure the eggs they're putting in the carton are not fertilized eggs?
Because they're white.
No?
No.
No?
I have no.
Okay, so Faith's getting closer.
Wait, the shell is like.
It's as much simpler than I think you're making it out to be.
Oh, it's the yolk. The
What
yolk.
did Faith say?
Oh, it's like
What
jiggly
did
when you
Faith
shake
say?
it. When you
Lisa, they do not allow a male chicken to be near the female. Only female hens lay eggs. So if they never allow a male rooster near them, they can't be fertilized.
Wait, but what if the male rooster guy like gets in there? And,
Then they can fertilize them.
but what if they don't know and there's
Then
like actual baby
They usually
chicks?
will. They usually so a couple things. They sometimes will check. It's called candling an egg. They used in the olden times. They used to take eggs, hold them up to a candle, and you could sort of see through them. You could see if there's any baby chick that's developed.
Does it
Nowadays, though,
we throw
to be honest, even if it were fertilized, you would probably never know it because they're taken away from the mother as soon as they're laid. The embryo would never like start to grow. So there could be a 3 or 4 cell embryo in there that you can't see because they were never incubated to actually grow. So even you probably even wouldn't know, but they just keep the rooster away from the hen house and they can't be fertilized, and then they collect the eggs. So when we look at an egg, you know, if you were to look at the cross section, this is what you see. Obviously, you have the shell of an egg around the outside. And we're going to talk about what all these parts do on your next slide. So I'm just going to name them. What do you think this is pointing to?
Ow! Egg!
Oh, sorry, we're going to go from outside to in. Then there's the shell membrane.
Oh, that's like that dotted.
Yeah, if you ever peel like a hard-boiled egg
There's always like that thin like layer.
Yeah.
That's really nasty.
that you peel off, that's the shell membrane. When we soaked our eggs in vinegar for our osmosis experiment, the thing I was holding on to, that flexible, felt like a balloon, that was the shell membrane. It was still intact after we got rid of the shell. Then we have the yolk. The whole yellow part in the egg is called the yolk. It's surrounded by something, you know what it might be called?
Egg white.
Yolk membrane.
Cytoplasm.
Yolk membrane.
The face.
The egg white, we would call egg white. I mean, it's clear when it's a raw egg,
Yeah,
but
it kind of like
it
reminds.
turns white when you cook it. It's called albumin.
It's
It's
like
the
the cytoplasm.
technical name for it. The yolk membrane holds yolk together. You know, how many people like to eat eggs for breakfast or something? Or whatever?
It's sometimes as well.
So, you know, if you're trying to make like sunny side up or something, you're trying not to rupture that yolk membrane so the yolk spills all over. You want to keep it intact so you break with your toast. and
Isn't it
stop
very
up.
thin?
Yeah, it's really
Well,
thin.
I don't like
I'm a Chef Boyardee kid.
Now, you may not have noticed it, but if you look at a raw egg, there are these white sort of stringy things attached to the yolk.
Yeah.
Those are called the chalazae.
What are they?
And
That's chaleza.
chalaza, or 2 of them are chalazae. And so, when the egg is still intact before you crack it, they're actually like stretched across from one side of the egg to another, and they hold the yolk sort of in the middle, so it doesn't like sink to the bottom or
because
anything.
then, like, when you like
When it,
crack
like,
the
splat.
egg,
Yeah,
then
there's-
it would just like be like.
Yeah, they're still attached there to the yolk though when you crack a raw egg and look at it. If you ever crack an egg also, you'll notice in the large end of the egg, you know, an egg's like one end's larger, one's narrower. In the large egg, there's a little bubble in there, a gap. That's the airspace.
Yeah, like when you try to cook eggs, like I don't know, when I tried to cook eggs, there was like a little like bubble in the like,
Yeah.
almost like in the, it was like close to where the white of it is.
Yeah. Or if you make hard-boiled egg and peel them, they always have like an indentation. That's where this airspace was.
It is?
That's easier to crack.
Yeah. The last part is this, and
It's like an eye.
you gotta look real closely at a raw egg if you crack one, but there's a tiny white dot on the yolk
Is
somewhere.
it the membrane?
It's called the blastoderm. And this is the actual cell that would be fertilized by a sperm cell and grown to an embryo. So a lot of people think like the yolk would turn into the chick. It's not. It's this tiny little spot that is on the yolk is the cell that could be fertilized and grow into
If
a
that
chick.
got fertilized,
That
there
would be a
could be
chick.
a chick.
Is that the last of our announcement? I have
No.
a question.
Yes,
When
right.
you're like, okay, so
We're not
I was
done.
baking our brownies,
Yeah.
and when I cracked the egg, the yolk stuff came out, and then there was this thing dripping from like eggshell.
Yeah.
Like it's
Dripping?
Being stuck there. It's stuck.
It's liquid?
yeah, it looks like
Yeah, well, the egg white has sort of two different parts. One is more watery, and one is like a thicker sort of, yeah, it's just two different parts of the egg white. It's normal, it's normal.
Okay.
All right, so let's finish up and talk about what these parts actually
I
do.
squeezed it.
The
too much.
shell of an egg, it's made of calcium. That's why I could dissolve it with vinegar, which is an acid. And actually, as the embryo grows inside of the egg, the shell dissolves, and the chick uses the calcium from the shell to make its bone.
Isn't that because it's made out of calcium and calcium?
Yes, calcium is important in making
makes
bone.
bones like
And also, as it uses up the calcium from the shell gets thinner, and that makes it easier for it to break out of once
Yeah,
it's
it
fully
has like a
developed.
little tooth thing. Like,
Yeah, an egg tooth. The shell membrane, that next layer in, that helps protect from any bacteria getting into that egg, because obviously it would be a good environment for bacteria to grow. It's moist, it's warm in there. So
Wait.
the shell membrane helps prevent any bacteria from getting into the eggs.
So like, if there wasn't a shell membrane, all this bacteria
They could get in, yeah.
Yeah, right. Nope.
The airspace, that little bubble of air, that's important because it helps as a shock absorber. The egg gets jostled around. But also, when that chick is just about to hatch, that's where it pokes its beak for the first time, and it takes its first breath out of that little airspace,
wow.
and then starts breaking out of the shell.
Wait, so if it doesn't break out of the shell like fast enough,
Yeah.
it dies.
Yep.
Wait, but what if you crack the eggshell?
Poor loser.
Usually, if it can't make its way out, it's probably not a very healthy chick to begin
So
with.
about like, how about if you like make it healthier?
So it's kind of like a test.
Yeah, sort of. All right, the yolk. So if the yolk doesn't turn into the chick, what is it?
The little cell thingy, the verminomene. Oh wait, is it the?
What is the yolk? The yolk is
Oh.
it's energy.
Oh.
It's high in fat, vitamins, minerals. That's going to be used by the chick as it grows from a tiny little few cells into a whole chick. It needs a lot of energy to do that. It gets that energy from the yolk. Okay? And so, sometimes if people are trying to eat maybe a little healthier, they don't want to get as much fat and calories in their diet, what might they order for breakfast?
Egg white.
Yeah, they may order like an egg white omelet or an egg white. That's because they're not using the yolk, so you're eliminating some of the fats and calories from the egg. When you eat just egg whites, it's almost all protein. Vinny, stop please. All right, this will be our last slide. So the yolk membrane just sort of encloses yolk, holds it all in one place, holds it together. The chalazi, what did I say? What do they do?
It holds the like eggies
It,
in the
like-
middle.
Yeah, it.
Suspends the yolk in the egg.
Oh.
The albumin, what did I just say?
It's the
egg
egg
white. white.
What's it made of mostly?
Protein.
Protein.
Protein. Provides the protein for the
And then
embryo.
and
Chick
then
as it grows.
isn't that goo stuff like water or whatever?
Well, the liquidier part is more water, and then the thicker, gooey part that you guys are talking about is more protein.
How do like birds drink like chicks? Do they like get their beak?
They get it through the albumin.
No, but like I mean.
Oh,
when
you mean
they're-
the bird?
Yeah.
Yeah, through its beak.
Like wait, do they like go underwater and like open their
No,
mouth?
they just suck it up through their beak. And then finally, blastoderm. What is the blastoderm's purpose?
Oh, to become the chick.
Yeah, that's going to become the embryo if it were fertilized by a sperm cell. It would start, it'd go from a single cell into 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, 1024,
Wow.
2048.
You can stop.
That's the name of the game.
You're just randomly.
I'm just showing off
Yep.
my